Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the OCHBS and Beard Bros collaboration today. We're here, everybody's from Ohio. We're here to talk about Senate Bill 56 and also some new developments that's occurring in the state. Today, I have joining me Fatty Budimitri from Ascension. I have Ariane Kirkpatrick from Mavuno. I have Emily Kelleher from Penalties and Mr. Jim Ickes from Zuba Lawler. So thank you everyone for joining us today and appreciate you taking the time out to join me today. So I want to start off today. We have some breaking news. Miss Emily just had a conversation with me before the talk. And I want her to kind of dive in a little bit about this news conference that's going on right now as we speak. That's really talking about Senate Bill 56 combining with Senate Bill 86 to form House Bill 160. So we're going to jump into a little bit of that conversation before we really get the conversation that we were here to talk about going. So can you kind of talk about it a little bit, Emily?
Yeah, sure thing. First of all, thanks for having me. These podcasts and webinars are crucial just for awareness and general education, just for our industry and the public in general. So thank you so much for having me. My name is Emily. I'm the Vice President of Business and Governmental Affairs for Penalties. We're a locally owned small standalone processor in Columbus, Ohio. In governmental affairs, I'm down at the State House working with our legislators, trying to educate, on awareness and just how things work operationally, whether it's, in processing, retail spaces, et cetera. And so it's just really important for us to kind of close those educational gaps. So what Lenny just mentioned, as we all know, there's been a bill as SB 56 that was introduced in addition to a hemp ban bill, which was House Bill, or I believe it was SB 86. We just learned that they just combined both of those bills to House Bill 160. They just finished up with their press conference just now. And, I believe there's a lot of positives that will come from this particular bill. It looks like they're respecting the will of the voter and duplicating a lot of the language that was written into issue 2. And so this will be a further, developing just issue and things that we'll just have to continually work on.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, I guess we can, I was going to start with the intros, but thank you for that. So Mr. Fatty Budimitri, can you let the people know who you are? And also you had a little bit of information about the bills as well.
So Fatty Budimitri, I'm one of the founders of Ascension. We're a small craft cultivation facility in Oberlin, Ohio. And soon to have a dispensary in Seven Hills, Ohio, which we're extremely excited about.
Congrats.
Thank you very much. So as far as breaking news, as Emily mentioned, there's a lot going on right now between the original Senate bill for marijuana, specifically the original Senate bill for hemp being combined, but there's also the House bill that just came out today, which is largely in combination with those two. And then we have what Jim can tell us a little bit more about the actual budget bill of the state of Ohio, and kind of there's a provision in there that affects the industry as well.
So Miss Ariane Kirkpatrick from Mavuno, we're going to get into a lot of specifics, but when we were talking about this new revelation, the social equity piece, we know it's going to probably not. It's going to be included, as Fatty was mentioning to me prior to the call, but it's not going to, I guess, be effective the way that it should be. So can you talk a little bit about the social equity piece, because you were the first minority full vertical here in the state. How important was that at the time, when you received your license, and how important is it going forward, with the state keeping that intact?
Well, thank you again, Lenny, and everyone for inviting me to participate. My name is Ariane Kirkpatrick. I'm the owner of Mavuno of Ohio. We were formerly known as Harvest. We have one dispensary in Athens, Ohio, and we are opening up 2 in the Cleveland area and on Detroit Avenue, and one in South Euclid on Mayfield. So we're very excited. Hope to be open real soon. By June, we'll see. we'll keep knocking on wood for that date to happen. And as many of you know, social equity and the minority set aside program was very instrumental in me first getting into business. I was the first woman and the first Black that was vertically integrated in the state of Ohio. And without the insight from previous legislators, I am 100% sure that I would not have had that opportunity. Unfortunately, that was stricken out, and it was found to say that, by the higher courts, that there was no proof that there was any discrimination in this business. Well, it was a new industry, so you can't even say that if it was if there was any discrimination, because there wasn't any Asians or any shuns that occurred. But obviously, when you look at the numbers throughout the United States, it's only 4.3% that are actually in this business. As far as owners, they like to heighten the numbers, and that's with ancillary businesses, which are very, very important. Ancillary businesses that are able to get into business as a part of this industry is very good. But you don't want something full of just all ancillary. You want some of the decision makers, some of the big businesses, one of the 3 licenses. So when we look at that number is unfortunately low. The other disappointing part about that was because when you have minority set aside programs, also in construction, you tend to get the folks that are the majority to prey on small female owned or minority owned businesses, and you tend to get more front companies, and you get to get people that don't have a true vision to grow the underrepresented. In my case, they felt that that's what was happening, and they charged our small little company $500,000 and stopped the minority set aside program, which is sort of very contradictory. And the person that was hurt the most from that was me. I paid 100% of $500,000 because they felt that I was not a minority program. So am I surprised about what's going on today? Nope, not one bit at all. I got in. They thought they were doing me a favor and said, well, grandfather you in. And it still has been a journey for us. I think the social equity needs to really work, but it needs to work in the true format of what it's really made for.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Well, Jim, I know we started off with the breaking news with Emily, talking about the combination forming the House Bill 160. And Fatty, did mention that the House bill is kind of, different from the Senate bill. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know there's a lot of confusion out there with people assuming, one bill over the other and one is going to take precedent over the other. So how does that really work?
All right. So for our viewers, one thing just to know is that this is in flux right now. So there's many versions of bills out there, and a lot of them contain bad ideas. So I think the overarching point that needs to be made is that, if you're supportive of cannabis normalization in the state of Ohio, that dream is under attack by our state legislature and ostensibly our governor. And so folks need to be vigilant and need to reach out to your senators and state reps and in the governor's office to let them know that this is a bad idea and it's bad for Ohio. And it's bad for cannabis patients, bad for operators who are already trying to do business with one arm tied behind their back with 280E tax issues and everything else. And now they're trying to put more restrictions on the industry when the sky isn't falling. In fact, there's really no data out there to indicate that legalization of cannabis in the state of Ohio has led to any wrongdoing or nefarious conduct or people getting sick. There's a lot of reefer madness out there continuously, and so folks need to remain vigilant. So getting to your question, Lenny, I know that there's a House bill out there that is merged with SB 56 as it was passed by the Ohio Senate. I can't speak to that, but what I can do is I can speak to, because I'm not familiar with the House bill, because that has not passed. I focused on SB 56 because actual adult thinking human beings passed that legislation down in the Ohio Senate, and there's a lot of bad ideas in there that aren't going to work for Ohio and aren't going to work for the operators in our state. But one thing that's likely to happen is there's likely to be an increase in the taxes on the sale of cannabis in the state of Ohio. There was one version of the bill that was increasing it to 15%. That's completely out of whack with what's going on in other adult use states. Missouri, which has a really booming cannabis market, has a 6% tax rate. It's still doing very well, particularly since it's about half our population and nearly twice the revenue than what Ohio has. Michigan is at 10%, is my understanding. Now, there was a version that had it at 15%, but my understanding has been rolled back to 10 as passed. However, as I think as Fadi referenced, there's a budget bill out there that wants to hike it up to 20%, which I think would be absolutely devastating. So, which is it shows that there's not much thinking going on. It's clear that the politicians want more of the golden eggs that the goose is laying, but are also strangling the goose at the same time. So it makes no sense. In SB 56, there's a cap on THC, which any operator will tell you that that's harmful to the market, as folks tend to desire higher THC products. Capping THC is just going to do what's going on right now. It's going to send folks over to Michigan to go buy the cannabis that they want and the products that they want. There's limitations on home grow, cutting that back from 12 plants to 6, regardless of how many adults are in your house. There's going to be a cap. At least there's a desire to cap licenses at 350 licenses in the state, which is far below the number of dispensary licenses that are available in many other states. Last figure I saw, it leaves us at about like 2.7 dispensaries per 100,000 consumers in the state, which is, that's not providing good service to cannabis consumers in the state of Ohio if they were to put limitations on that and legislation. Original version of SB 56 gutted or took the tax revenue from social equity programs and other programs designated to fight against the war on drugs and moved it over to the general fund. My understanding from Fadi today is that may be changing and moving that over back away from the general fund back to the way it was intended when issue 2 passed in the state of Ohio, but that remains to be seen. That's why we got to remain vigilant. There's crackdown on advertising. There's always our politicians are always hiding behind the children and not making sure that cannabis businesses aren't marketing to children. However, I mean, you watch the nightly news or primetime television, you can see Jim Beam and Jack Daniels ads, so they don't seem to care much about that. However, they want to hide behind the kids when it comes to cannabis restrictions and trying to restrict the marketing.
Well, I was going to say, if I could jump in, Jim.
Yeah, go ahead.
As we mentioned social equity, we mentioned issue 2 passing, but now they're trying to strip it back from the voter. One, I'm curious as to, has this ever been done before? Has a bill ever been passed into law where they went back and changed it? That's just a question that I have as a consumer, as an advocate, as a person in the industry. But secondly, I know this particular bill affects each one of your businesses differently. So if I could you explain to the audience, Emily, Fadi, and Ariane, how, if this bill was to pass with the potency cap, with the high taxes and things of that nature, how would it affect you as a processor, as a grower, and as a dispensary owner? I'll let you go first. We'll go, Ariane. You can start.
I just want to comment on the taxes. It just amazes me that you would have a 20% tax, and that they said that one of the reasons they said that they were really creating this bill was to fight against the illicit market. And I would really like to ask the IRS how many drug dealers filed taxes last year and really put the amount of money that they sold. So how is that fighting against the illicit market? To me, you're pushing it for them to get more business, because they're not going to have to pay, and they don't pay taxes. And now I was being facetious when I say drug dealers file taxes. They don't. Let's keep it real. So that's not helping anything about curbing the illicit market. It's going to affect us as business owners.
So since you're the last, basically on the front line, so everything starts with Fatty, right? Flowers grown, goes to Emily to be processed, then the products are basically sold to you to be sold to the consumers or patients. So when that taxes comes about, is that passed on to the patient?
Most definitely. But we have so many different sales, and we work with the different processors to try to curb and have discounts, but it definitely is going to hit the bottom line. And so unfortunately, it does hit the patients. Not necessarily patients, it hits all of our customers, because we have both recreational and medical. And unfortunately, it may push them, especially folks that had not smoked marijuana for years, that have just started experiencing, for the calming effects. And they're like, oh, okay, I like this, I enjoy this. And then so when the taxes go high and our prices are higher, they will go to that market where it's not tested, where we don't know what is being grown in it. Or they will go to one of these smoke shops that are not regulated. Unbelievable. You get a dime a dozen. It's almost like Detroit, Michigan, or any store in Michigan where you can get any store, no regulation from the cities or the state. And they are telling the folks, oh, that has plenty of THC in it. We do it. We sell anything. We make anything. No regulation. And then you're going to see issues there. You're going to see health problems. You're going to see people putting things in product that should not be there.
So when we talk about the potency, Fatty, from you growing, because again, you're at the top of the pyramid, right? So how does that affect you when you're now selling product to Emily as a processor to make the products for our consumers here in the state? That's you, Fatty.
I mean, realistically, it's a trickle-down effect, right? Like, it starts at the beginning and it ends at the end. Before I get into that too far, there is one thing I want to give credit where credit is due. When SB 56 first came out, it was actually a lot worse than the version that passed. And frankly, there's a number of organizations, and I'm not going to be able to name them all, but it's a lot of organizations, individuals that fought, that made their voice heard. Before the bill even hit the floor and was introduced, they made more changes than I've ever seen made to a bill. That's number one. So that's a kudos to everybody out there. Number two is the original proposal to raise the tax to 15% would have made Ohio the most expensive, highest taxed market in the region, but also the third highest in the country behind, and I'm going to botch this, but I believe it's California, and I can't remember what other state, right? But think about that from the perspective of, this is an Ohio that, everybody's talking about how Republican dominated it is. Well, Republican dominated, these Republicans are out here trying to tax this one thing when they're trying to be Republican on, not everything else. Let's be fair. They're picking and choosing where they want to be Republican and reduce taxes and be more pro-business and everything else. But, the 15% tax rate that was proposed and has been taken out was still going to make us one of the highest in the country and by far the highest in the region. Now they're proposing in the budget bill to make it 20%, and to give just kind of an understanding for people. You're at twice as much tax as Michigan charges, but we're not even scratching the surface of the fees that the operators have to pay, which I would argue are probably the highest in the country. Every time we decide we want to name a strain, we've got to pay just to name that strain. Every time we decide we want to post on social media, we got to pay $100 just to post that post on social media, right? Like there are so many fees that are essentially taxes that the Ohio program, I mean, so many people wonder why Ohio program is as expensive it is. I mean, there are multiple reasons, but the biggest reason why is the cost to play in Ohio. And all of that stems from the fees that are coming from the program itself. Those fees are being bolstered by these regulation or by these new rules, as opposed to, moving in the right direction. We've seen 6 months now of adult use sales, and I think we can all see that the number of break-ins and robberies and everything else hasn't dramatically changed in the state of Ohio. I'd argue that they haven't changed at all. In fact, I'm talking to a city about opening up for a potential dispensary, and their argument was that it was going to be such a big burden on their police and fire. So I went out and I did a federal Freedom of Information request from every city in Northeast Ohio for how many 911 calls have been made from the addresses of the dispensaries that already exist. I got 0 calls in 5 years listed. Zero, not a single call, not a single break-in, not a single theft. And it's pretty easy to know why. Everything is locked up every single night. So there's no way for people to have, to bear any fruit if they're breaking in. There's no way for, if I wanted to walk into a dispensary and just kind of clip something, put something in my pocket, it's impossible to do that because you don't even get shown the product until you've paid for it, right? So there is no additional burden on these cities. Instead, what they're seeing is the state of Ohio currently holding back on tax money that is guaranteed to these cities. It's theft. The state of Ohio is literally stealing from these cities right now. And I don't know what it's going to take for these cities to step up and fight for themselves. But I can tell you that, it's very much an uphill battle. We've won a small little fight. And I say we, I mean all of the people out there that have reached out to their senators, to their representatives, have won a small little fight in getting the language of SB 56 changed dramatically. But there's a lot of fighting left to do. My expectation is that we'll be fighting every day from now until July 1st when that budget bill passes. And then they'll take a little break. So we'll get a little break, but it's not going to be over then.
Well,
sorry, that was a long segue away from what you asked about, which is how does this bill specifically affect me as a cultivator? Today, as a cultivator, obviously the THC percentages are a slight issue. It's not the biggest issue for us, if I'm being honest, but it's an issue, right? It's a much bigger issue for the processors. But in the flower world, I've only ever had one strain that tested above 35%, and it was still in the what do they call it? The standard of deviation where it was still allowed to be sold. But the crazy part is if it was just slightly higher, there would have been almost no difference between one batch and the other, but the second batch that was higher would have had to have been destroyed. It's very arbitrary. There's no basis in science whatsoever. There are people out there getting more high off 17% THC flower than the 35% that they're worried about, but they are fixated so much on these particular taglines and line items. And, the THC percentage is one, but the big change would have been the taxes. The second biggest change for me would be the inability if this bill passes, the inability for me to sell directly to a dispensary, which I've been doing for 6 years. I would now have to sell all of my products to a processor, which then would sell it to a dispensary. And there's a lot of things I can say about that, from the additional cost for both patients and consumers. It's obvious if I have to move a product once and then the processor has to move it a second time, there's added cost there. But then there's also I no longer control the narrative when I'm delivering to a dispensary. I no longer control the cost because that processor might tack on an additional 20%. There's so many different variables there, and it's one of these, what's the old saying? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. What's broken about this? What are they trying to fix when they exclude a cultivator from being able to sell directly to a dispensary any longer? There is nobody that's being helped by this, but there are people that are being harmed.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. Going to Emily, like based on the program now, again, you could talk about how this affects you as a processor too. But if this stayed the same the way that it was voted in, what were the pros and cons? Is it something that we should have, I guess, fought for additionally on top of what the voters voted for? Like, could we have, enhanced this to be a little bit better than where we originally are? We're struggling to get pre-rolls into the market. We're struggling to get these 10B licenses up and running. I mean, it's a lot of things that we're behind on, but based on your processing side of things, again, how does it affect you? And what else could we do to make it better?
I really believe that at this point, there's just been so much misinformation, within our industry. The general public is more confused than ever, given just the different variability of all these different bills, and no one quite knows what it means. I saw a petition that was being passed around about like 2 weeks ago, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like this is like way too early, like none of this is even going to be valid, and like they're trying to gather all these signatures. So you can tell that that the public in general, like, they want to have their voice heard, they want to be loud. And I think one of the issues is that when they introduced SB 56, there was so much in there that is and will be addressed under the DCC, like the Department of Cannabis Coalition. So many things that they, discussed within that bill, like child-proof packaging, advertising regulations and restrictions, and, the safety of transportation to, the cultivator to the dispensary, processor to the dispensary, like all of that is already baked into that. And we're working with the DCC already on so many of these different just things that he pointed out specifically in the bill as being an issue. So back to the saying, don't fix something that's not broken. That is a huge majority of that bill that's just not broken. In addition to us, we are the true middleman, right? Being a processor, our costs are astronomical. Not only do we have to procure biomass from cultivators to be able to even produce in our own facilities, we then take all of the cost for delivery, labor costing, test costing, final product, like, our costs are astronomical. And so in the original bill, we called ourselves the orphan processors because so many of the other licensees got additional retail space. They were able to expand their cultivation. There are a lot of things that were baked into that as well, that we're currently still fighting for. That would alleviate, if we're able to even just have a 5,000 square foot grow, and it's just going to us just for biomass, for us to just be able to produce our products, that would be a huge lift, huge monetary lift for us. And that's just kind of like tip of that iceberg, really, as far as cost savings for us as a processor. I believe that, now with this new bill and, just other bills in general, I think that it's just really important for us to get out there and just talk amongst ourselves and try to fact check things specifically, because people can get very hyped up and get worked up about specific misinformation and not understand that there's another bill, what Fadi just mentioned, that's being passed through the general fund, saying, look, they want to increase it to 20%. Not many people even know that that's going on right now. And so there's so many different areas where I feel like it can be beneficial, webinars like this, getting more of us as industry professionals and experts out to speak to this stuff specifically in a timely manner. Even though, this just happened today with, 160, the new bill, but, we'll look through that and we'll get summaries and we'll kind of piece through. But I honestly feel like, when we passed issue 2, the voters knew what we voted for. I mean, it was very clear, you could read exactly, we all knew exactly what we were voting for. And I think that needs to be the message. It was the will of the people. I think to circle back to the THC percentages and just processing with distillate, I mean, that opens a lot of room for error, a lot of room for fillers and different variability factors when you're trying to fill to certain percentages. And you can get into the nitty gritty science of all of that. But, that's where you get into issues where we've seen in our, our neighbor up north and other states where they ended up using these vitamin E acetates and other fillers in order to get these percentages. And so that just goes back to just some of the misinformation. That's why education and awareness with our state reps is so crucial. Because it's going to take all of us as a unified group to make sure that we are continually, scheduling meetings and talking to them and saying, no, this is actually how it's working in the real world. This is where it's coming, as an operator, this is how it is. Nothing's been broken. We're very heavily regulated, where we're heavily restricted, everything's fine. So, but I would just echo Fadi in that there's a lot of variability within these bills, and until July, it's definitely going to be an uphill battle.
So once again, reiterating what Fatty said, about everybody advocating at the State House, going down testifying, saw Ariane there, saw Jeff from Venus. There were a lot of mayors or people from municipalities there upset about that money not coming to them as it was supposed to be proposed. And then when you start to get into a lot of the particulars about, prosecuting people, right? This is, we're supposed to be getting away from prosecuting people from, small amounts of cannabis or anything related to cannabis per se that makes sense. So, they're talking about, misdemeanor fines and up to big fines, people who are passengers in cars smoking. And it's just ridiculous. But Jim, to you, one, like protection rights, so now when we're talking about patients and people smoking, right, in their cars or outside of the cars, where are we with that? If this bill, I know it's changing now, as we talk, but, based on that from a patient's rights, right? How would employers, would they have the right to fire people who have medical cards? Because that seems to be a big question that comes to me all the time, right? I bought it from a legitimate dispensary like Ariane's, and I have a medical card, from a doctor recommendation. So why can't I use it like I would a Percocet or a Vicodin or anything other like that? You can go to work drunk, right? And probably be reprimanded, not lose your job per se, unless you kill somebody or do something very disastrous. So why is it that you can be fired for using medical cannabis?
Because we still have federal prohibition, and it's still a controlled substance. So until federal prohibition falls, or our state passes patients' rights, employer rights, child custody rights, blanket expungements for low-level cannabis offenses, people are still at risk. I know folks who could benefit from cannabis, but they're afraid of getting in an accident and having their blood drawn and seeing that they have cannabis in their system, and they lose their health insurance for their family. So one of my longtime friends, that's the reason why he doesn't have his medical card and why he doesn't consume, but he's got a bar in his basement. That's for I know that. So that's what he does. So, so my firm, you represent clients all over the country in cannabis. We've been in it since 2006. So I kind of have a little bit of a unique perspective because I've seen, markets that really take off. And the markets that take off, like Missouri, are the ones that came out of came to cannabis legalization by they expunged like 100,000 marijuana arrest records for folks. Things like that. That's how you get to normalization. Providing employment protections, particularly if you have a medical card with a condition, is how you normalize cannabis and you expand the market because folks aren't afraid that they're going to lose their job. Or you remove the smell of cannabis being a reason for probable cause for police to search your vehicle. You institute that. That was, I believe they're doing that in Massachusetts. We need to do those things to normalize it, and then the market will open up. and the sky isn't falling. Michigan hit over $3 billion in revenue last year. I know it's not all about the money, but that's reflective of what people are actually doing, and they're buying a lot of cannabis. And a lot of those folks are from Ohio that are going over to Michigan and buying cannabis. Last figure I saw was like 700 million last year. So turns out human beings really like cannabis, and they really need it, and they've liked it probably since the dawn of man, and they're going to keep on liking it and wanting it and needing it, and that's not going to change. And bills like SB 56 or whatever Franken bill they come up with to try to have a say and try to restrict it and try to squeeze more money out of it, it ultimately will be ineffective, because I think cannabis normalization is inevitable. We see it happening around the country with these markets that are absolutely taken off without the sky falling, and without the kids packing the ERs from cannabis overdoses, which is all blown out of proportion. So I know I kind of got off on a soapbox, and I got on my soapbox and on a rant, but the key is vigilance and being involved, and also speaking your truth. And if you're a cannabis consumer, don't shy away from expressing that, because I think people are so accustomed to sneaking out into their garage or around the corner to consume their cannabis because it is federally illegal. But I think in order to change, you have to be out there with it. You have to speak on behalf of it. You have to write emails and letters to politicians and let people know where you stand on it, or they're going to try to take it away. It's I know the horse is out of the barn to a certain extent here, and bills like SB 56 are absurd. And the good thing is they did in the version that passed, SB 56 that passed in the Senate does have some good things, where they do have expungement for low-level cannabis convictions. So there are some good things in there. They need to expand that, and those things will expand the market. If folks know they're not going to lose custody of their kids or lose their visitation, get some cannabis protection under law, then those folks are going to go to a legal dispensary. If folks know that they're allowed to consume in their house unabated, or without the cannabis Gestapo coming by, that's going to help normalize cannabis in the state of Ohio. But I feel like I'm talking a lot, so if somebody else wants to
no, I was going to say, no. With that being said, Fatty Emily, I guess you could talk to this, and Ariane too. So, as a patient, as a consumer, as an advocate, what direction would you give us to go to? Now we have House Bill 160, we had Senate Bill 56, and so now with this combination of the two merging, if I'm calling my senators or state reps or emailing or going down to the state house, what am I pushing for, right? Which direction should I go? Am I calling my House of Representative rep too? How do we, I guess, keep this moving forward for us, as the people in Ohio to get the voice heard and our actions, taken seriously?
I'll let the ladies go first if they want to. Otherwise, I can talk about this forever.
Well, go ahead.
Well, it's very important to speak to our representatives. Even before Senate Bill 56, we were scheduling like weekly meetings with different representatives from the Senate and the House to talk and encourage about not cutting out the social equity, not letting them know that we agreed with regulations, but just not over regulations. And one of the things that just was really shocking when we did hear murmurs about them challenging it, when you have a victory margin such as issue 2, you very rarely, because you asked that, Lenny, you said, has this happened anywhere else? You very, very rarely see a state or on any elections for the overturning or the change of anything that was voted for the people and by the people, especially with the margin that high. You may see like maybe less than 1%, 0.6% of something, 0.06 of something for a recount. And many times, I think even on that, you've only seen overturns 3 times. This is outlandish and this is rare. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So I think it set everybody, shocked everybody, because there's no way you would have thought, again, with the victory margin like that we would be seeing this happen. But we are seeing a lot of different things happen that we never thought that we would see in these modern times now. So since they want to overturn that, you better believe that I am going to be in somebody's face asking for my $500,000 back that was stolen from me to support an ORS program that did nothing.
What do you say, Emily?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely echo her sentiments. And then additionally, try to attend your town halls and your local municipalities. There's a lot of different counties and cities that are currently trying to put up moratoriums against dispensaries, which we know will, keep from the general public and patients having proper access to medicine and adult use cannabis. Attend those meetings, come down to the State House and join us, and, call your senators, call your reps, talk about how beneficial this program is. One of the things that I talk about as well is just how economically impactful it's been. The amount of people that we've been able to employ over the last 6-7 years as a program has been tremendous. It's been huge. And people from all walks of life, super diverse, inclusive. It's a pathway to entry for so many. And so I think that that's a huge factor and a great talking point as well. Just in addition to, look, we have a program. It's worked very well so far. It's been incredibly beneficial. Look at this economic growth and impact that we've had. And, we have to keep going with this. And, I think it's also important to mention, we're building the foundation of our industry now. We're so much in our infancy as far as just that the cannabis industries in general. Other states, they've been a little bit more established. They have a few years on us, but, collectively, we're all like building this as we go. And so I think what's important to mention here is that we do have so many different facets of cannabis culture. I like to call it the clash of culture in so many ways, because we do have, the big multi-state, big companies. And then you also have the old guard advocates, the advocates, the cannabis connoisseurs, and we all need to come together in a unified approach to help push this industry forward. So, I welcome anybody to reach out to me. I'm happy to meet with everybody and come up with a unified message. We also are having our lobby days that we're doing on March 20th in a couple weeks, which will be down at the State House. And we have a panel of legislators that so graciously have taken time out of their day to come sit and talk with us and talk about the current landscape. So I encourage everybody to join us there as well.
So that's March, you said March 20th from 10 to 4, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right, Fatty, what about you, sir?
I think it's, first of all, Lenny, you asked the question, has this happened before where the will of the people is subverted? I know in Ohio, the answer is no. Talked to a gentleman who's been in Ohio politics for 35, I think, years. And he said he's never seen in his life something like this happen. And he's been talking to other representatives and senators and saying a lot of them are out there going, I'm not down with this. I'm not trying to subvert the will of the people. This is all being done without my, without my knowledge, without my consent. So we're gonna have to force people to put their money where their mouth is and stand up for what they're saying they believe in, the will of the people, very soon here. And you asked what people can do without touching on what the other two already said. I think one thing that I would ask personally is for the veterans in Ohio, especially those veterans who may not want to be on the medical list because, they don't like being on a list at all. They don't trust being on that list. Maybe they have a CCW and they can't be a medical card holder. Maybe they are a medical card holder. It doesn't matter. But the veterans out there, you have a big voice in Ohio. Please use it. You are being hurt in this bill. with the THC caps and the milligram per gram caps. These are things that are just going to force you to take additional pills, additional drinks, additional whatever it is to get to where you need to go. I know people who have been in car accidents and need 1,000 milligrams per day. How is somebody supposed to get to 1,000 milligrams per day without just, smoking all day if they're not able to get, the different forms in the higher concentrates that they need. So my ask today would be for the veterans specifically. I know I appreciate the fact that you've represented this country in the most honorable way you possibly can, but I think you need to step up for yourselves also in this regard and say, hey, listen, I have a problem with this. And I know I've talked to a number of veterans that are already doing that, but if I'm being honest, 125 has power. 12500 has a lot more power. Make your voice heard.
So I'm about to get off the rails just a little bit. And I heard a rumor, and it may not be true or not, but the rumor was the NRA was, they're basically, or the state of Ohio is basically courting them, right, to come here to set up their national headquarters, right? And in doing so, they're giving them or willing to offer them a tax abatement, right, to make that happen. So I haven't researched it. Somebody asked me about it, so I was curious if have you heard that one? But if that is the case, right? So you have, we always debate about guns. We always debate about alcohol and cigarettes, right? Because those other three we know cause harm in the communities, right? Their issue, whether they want to say it is or not. So if they were to give tax abatement to the NRA to come here for a headquartered purpose, like, why do you feel like the cannabis community is always under attack, for monetary reasons? Is it for, the people thinking that you guys are making so much money that, it's the drug dealer mentality, as Ariane was saying, about the paying taxes piece of it? So I was just curious. I know this has nothing to do with the Senate bills or anything like that, but I was wondering if you heard that, and if that is the case, how do you feel about that? Anybody can speak on it if you heard about it.
I don't know anything about the NRA coming to Ohio, so I can't speak to that. But I definitely have an opinion as to why I think cannabis is always under attack, and I think it's because of the drug war, and I think it's because cannabis is very popular with human beings. In fact, we have a system that's wired for it in our body, the endocannabinoid system. So for whatever reason, we manufacture our own endocannabinoids. We manufacture our own THC, which all you folks all know, and anybody that's going to watch this will know that. But a lot of regular folks don't, that are walking around, they don't understand that how this plant is really wired to protect us in certain ways and help us with inflammation and help our nervous system communicate with our immune system. So there's still needing to be more research on this, but cannabis is really important to human health and wellness. So that's why people are willing to risk their liberty to sell it and transport it and use it. They've been doing that for years and years and years. And I think law enforcement understands that. One of the top probable cause reasons for searching vehicles is the smell of cannabis in the United States. And that hasn't changed. It's been that way for years. Everybody knows Tim Johnson. Just talk to Tim Johnson about that because that's the truth. So I think that's why they're always attacking it, because it's an easy target, because people are going to use it anyway, and it's a relatively harmless plant, but yet reefer madness still persists, and there's a reason for that. I think we have a private prison industry in this country that wants to put people in jail because they make a lot of money doing it, and arresting people for cannabis is still happening in many jurisdictions and states around the country, and still happening here in Ohio. So I think because it's so popular, Lenny, and it always will be, I think that's why reefer madness exists, and
Well, I mean,
cannabis is such a target.
Football, basketball is popular. Like, I'm just curious, like, why focus on this particular industry? Well, one, they see the tax dollar, right? Supposedly, all of these municipalities, even the state, they created this program to help whatever they're trying to do, the roads, the schools, what have you, right? So now, why attack something that could benefit you? Why not try to talk to Emily, Fatty, Ariane, and say, as a community, right? How can we help you help us versus us attacking? And now everybody's losing, because the state's losing because they're losing tax dollars with the craziness that they're doing, thinking raising the taxes is going to make them more money when it's not, right? So, I guess what as you guys here, as the voices of your particular industries, what would you tell the state? Like, and I know you were down there advocating, Ariane, but like, what would you say to them? Now if we had their ear, how could they benefit you and you could benefit them to make this thing cohesive for everybody to win?
I mean, I would start by saying that overregulation isn't going to help anybody. It's not going to do anything except stifle the program. And anybody that thinks that stifling the program means less marijuana in Ohio, and I'm going to say it as bluntly as I possibly can, you're stupid. You're stupid. There will be no less marijuana in Ohio if this program is stifled to the absolute maximum. All you will have is more illicit marijuana in Ohio. You will always have the same amount of marijuana in Ohio, whether there's a program or not. The question is whether it will be regulated by the state of Ohio, whether it will be regulated by the state of Michigan and brought across illegally, or whether it will be grown at home or grown by somebody down the street or shipped up from Mexico. It will be here. There is nobody in the state of Ohio right now today that goes, man, I wish I had access to cannabis. Everybody has access to cannabis. You get on your phone right now and you can find 14 websites that will deliver some form of cannabis to your home, not in this program, not allowed in this program, but it's allowed outside of this program. It's happening every single day. I literally get bombarded with, there's a, in where I'm putting my dispensary, there is right next door, there is a mechanics shop. And what's been sitting at the mechanics shop for the last week, now that we're 30 days or less away from getting open, it's a giant truck that says, ask me where to get medical marijuana. And guess what? It doesn't lead to any of the dispensaries in Ohio. The number doesn't lead to any of the dispensaries in Ohio. So what I would tell all of whether it's politicians, whether it's anybody that's out there is no less marijuana in Ohio with or without this program. There will always be the same amount. The question is, will it be safe? Will it be laced with fentanyl? Will the state of Michigan get the tax dollars, or will the state of Ohio get those tax dollars? Those are the only questions you should be asking yourself. Anything else is just being stupid.
What about you, Ariane?
Man, Fatty just said it all. He really did. He's so passionate about it, and he's right. I mean, it's simply stupid. It's totally unbelievable. And when you read their reasonings, it just doesn't make any common sense. So sometimes it's hard to battle something that is just so asinine, because you're just in awe of the stupidity and the naiveness of it. It's just like, wow. And just a lot like what Jim said, it is simply a lot of it because of the war on drugs. I mean, and I know his name is Anslinger, but I tend to call him Ass Slinger. He was an ass, but it's just the simple hatred of anything that you think is different that we have seen for so many years that continues to perpetuate and get worse every year. It's amazing.
What about you, Emily?
In addition to all of that, I will say specifically, and I'm going to speak more to just the DCC regulations that's also tied into all the bills that we are seeing. It's our advertising restrictions, and advertising is kind of like a blanket term, which I like to put education directly underneath that advertising umbrella, because as operators and licensees, all we want to do is to be able to go out into the general public, and to your point, Fetty, be able to tell them, hey, I have a legal dispensary where you can buy triple tested, safe product legally, and know that it's safe, know that it's not laced, know that it's not filled with pesticides and heavy metals and, God knows what else. And like, that's the message that we need to be sending, is that education and awareness piece. And we are so handicapped under this program at the moment. And it's tied into all of these other bills that are bubbling up and mushrooming them up. It's just, so for me, that's one of my talking points when I am down there, is we have to be able to put out at least generic PSAs. Hey, these are where the legal dispensaries are. Come take tours. Like, these are the products that are available, that sort of thing. And we've just been so, handicapped with our regulatory framework as far as being able to educate, the general public. I mean, even down to, having our bud tenders educated. I mean, that's been such a massive hurdle. I was in retail here for almost 5 years. And when we began that program, medically, I mean, that was super frustrating that even my employees couldn't even speak to the plant and talk specifically, just high level, hey, this could possibly help with your inflammation, that sort of thing. And what I've seen too, operationally, as far as just, the regulatory submission process is, things seemingly are getting more strict as far as what we're able to say, not say, as far as our packaging and labeling and stuff like that. So it seems like in a lot of ways we're moving backwards when we should be moving forwards, and the guardrail should be widening. So that's something that is very high on my list. And I encourage, just all of my colleagues in general, especially as operators, to talk about that as well. Because it's true. Outside of the 3 C's, you have Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati. It's rural Ohio, and people don't know necessarily that there's a program. And even within the city, I mean, you go to the restaurants and, it's wild how many people just have no clue that it's even a program, let alone that now there's all these various bills and, the stuff that we know what's going on. In addition to, I know we've mentioned this, but the intoxicating hemp factor with the vape shops and all of these other places that are mushrooming them up, that almost rose in parallel to issue 2 being passed. And then you saw the rise of all these shops. So, all of that is muddied as well in the general public. So for me as an operator, I would love nothing more than be able to educate freely, be able to attend events freely, representing my brand and, operators and the program in general. And so that would be my call to action for just the general public and as operators, is we have to be unified in just our approach and our dialogue, and make sure that we're all, working towards the same goals.
So speaking on a unified community, and, as patients talk about high prices here, right? How can you guys come together to get the prices down? Like, what is it? And I'm speaking on this from the hemp bill being combined into the cannabis bill with the 160, right? Because everybody, that I speak to, you have two versions of why they like certain hemp products versus cannabis, right? Because of the cost, right? That's the primary thing, right? So what could be done between the 3 factors of, processing, cultivating, and, Arion being at the last of the regime with the pricing for the consumer? Like, how can you work together, I guess, with the state to help you get there, right? Because a lot of it is contributed to not being able to do certain things, right? So that keeps the prices high. That's just my opinion. But, could you elaborate on that? Is there a possibility to do that to help the patients in the pricing, or no? I see.
Yeah, I mean, I think that will come with the maturing of the program in general. But a lot of it is cost of doing business. You're paying for the quality at the dispensary level. I mean, triple testing, testing is expensive. It's incredibly expensive. The amount of monetary costs that we have that goes towards testing specifically, weekly, monthly, I mean, it's astronomical. And so I believe one of you mentioned it earlier. I mean, it's a trickle-down effect. I heard this analogy recently where it was like if you're going to go to the store and you have 2 containers of blueberries and the one container of blueberries is moldy, but like some of them are good. You could pick out the good ones, but the majority of it are kind of moldy, gross. It's going to go bad probably within the next day or so. And you have another package of blueberries that are, they're more natural, they look great, and they're a few dollars more. Naturally, the general public would probably tend to go towards the one that is better quality. You'd pay a little bit more for that better quality. So I heard an analogy recently between, that our partners up north versus, their race to the bottom with pricing, which hasn't helped the program at all. Businesses are going out of business. They're losing money. The program is not doing great up there. So lower pricing does not always mean, better quality and, better patient experience. And so I think in Ohio specifically, and I think probably the 3 of us as operators can agree, it's the cost of business. As much as we would love to give the cheapest gummy, the cheapest vape, at the end of the day, we got to keep our lights on. We have employees that, we're, paying for their health insurance, and, we have a whole living, breathing industry that we're also trying to keep alive while also trying to keep our lights on to be able to provide the best quality product and end product that, you can sell in the dispensary. So I think that question is very layered, I would say, for sure.
Yeah.
Just to add on to that, Lenny, one of the things that makes Michigan's cannabis so much cheaper than Ohio's cannabis is outdoor grows, which are not allowed in Ohio, but there are millions of acres of outdoor in Michigan. So that's one. Number 2 then is Michigan's testing allows 100,000 parts per million of microbials, 100,000. We allow 10,000 in Ohio. So what does that mean? If you're buying something in a Ohio dispensary, you're guaranteed it's at least 10 times cleaner than what it might be in Michigan, right? Michigan, if they're allowed to have 100,000 parts per million of microbials and we're only allowed 10,000, then you're only getting cleaner product here in Ohio. Those are 2 of the major reasons, testing being as expensive as it is, the amount of product that unfortunately can't be sold in a dispensary because it tested over those limits, the number of fees that I have to pay for every strain name, and then if it's 34% THC versus 31% THC, those are 2 different, what do you call it? Registrations that I have to do. So each one of those is $100. And then if it goes down to 28%, again, I've got to register it a 3rd time at another $100. So these are all little ticky-tack fees that are causing the Ohio market to be more expensive. Ohio's market will never be as cheap as Michigan, but I dare anybody to go back to Michigan in 2020, look at their prices and tell me they were any cheaper than Ohio is today. They weren't. The difference is now they're using cheaper products. They're putting in things that they're not allowed to put in. Their testing is so much less stringent than Ohio's that they're getting away with it. If they're starting to clamp down now on some of it. So there have been a few operators that have gotten punished in Michigan, but the reality is you could go to a dispensary in Michigan and get something totally different than what you thought was going to be in there, filled with a whole bunch of things you didn't know were going to be in there. And people are starting to wake up to this. You're seeing the Reddits where there's people, hey, I actually sent this to an independent third-party testing, and yes, there is blah 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 in here, and we're not going to put any names out there, but it happens in other states. You're never going to see that happen in Ohio because it's just so stringent.
Got it. Got anything?
So if you care like I care about what you put in your body, right? I'm the kind of person who will drive an extra 15 miles to go eat where I want to eat as opposed to eating at the local McDonald's. I'm sorry, I just won't do it. I'm very particular about what I put in my body, alcohol-wise, food-wise, cannabis-wise, all of it, right? That's why my facility grows clean the way that we grow without the use of pesticides and radiation or remediation. Like, it's important to me. And so I know other people, it's going to be important to them too. Going up to Michigan, you'd have to find the brand that's willing to do that. And it's knowing some of the operators in Ohio that also operate in Michigan, knowing what what they're able to buy at those border towns. It's not clean. It's just not.
Makes sense. Anything else, Ariane? All right. Well,
You said a mouthful.
well, we're coming around to our end. And again, thank the Beard Bros. Thank all of you for being here. Is there any last words that you would like? Once again, there's, like you said, March 20th at the State House for Lobby Day. Call your senators, call your House of Representatives, maybe even call the municipalities where these dispensaries are located, because, those tax dollars should be going to those places, right, to help those particular cities where you're doing business. Anything else that we could do to advocate, against the passing of this crazy bill, or I should say, against the language inside of the bill that's going to be harmful to us as a community in the cannabis space?
Use your voice. That's write op-ed pieces, contact your state reps and senators, show up on lobby day. If you're a cannabis user, don't keep it a secret. Share that, hey, I'm a tax-paying parent, and I'm a cannabis patient, and it helps me with my anxiety. So I make sure to tell people that, and I don't hide from it anymore. And I used to, though, because I didn't want any problems, and I didn't want the Ohio Supreme Court coming down on me because I'm a druggie, because I'm a cannabis consumer. But I mean, the only way to make reefer madness go away is to rage against it, essentially, and live your truth and speak your truth to people. One thing too, when you're talking about one point that Emily made earlier about jobs. I mean, the Ohio cannabis industry, last number I saw was employs 33,000 of our citizens, and that was pre-adult use, that number. So it's a lot higher than that now, I'm sure, and that can only go up. I mean, we're just scratching the surface on what the size of this market can be. On the price issue, supply and demand, we do need more biomass in the state of Ohio, and that's what they should be focusing on. Sun-grown cannabis is a good idea, and that's why it's, the prices are lower in Michigan. One of the reasons that's cannabis that can be used for extracts and bring those prices down. So, and they need to get the pre-rolls out. It's like the number one product in every state are pre-rolls. It's what people want. So that's what they should be doing. And particularly if they want to increase tax dollars, free the pre-roll. So that'll be my final words.
All right.
I have to change the trajectory of what young folks are seeing now, who wait until they're 18 years old and they're excited about voting. And then and sometimes you'll see folks about 21, I'm not going to vote because it's not going to make a difference. Wow. Have we really seen that happen this time for real? And I do not want them to see that their vote does not count, because this is really what we're seeing. So we need to talk, educate, and fight for things so that this is not a normal thing that we see.
No doubt.
Mr. Budimitri?
If there's one thing that I would say, the argument that I like to give people is cannabis is not a gateway drug. Drug dealers are the gateway to hard drugs. So if you take people away from the drug dealers, make them buy their cannabis from a dispensary, they will never have the opportunity to be upsold to a harder drug, and they will never have the opportunity to have something laced. Why? Because the Ohio dispensaries only have state-regulated, state-tested products on their shelves, and therefore you are guaranteed those two things will never happen. Do you want to kill your local drug dealer's economy? Do you want to get rid of all of his purchasers? You want to just plummet that market entirely? Put a dispensary in your community. Give people access to regulated cannabis at a fair price, and watch the drug dealers disappear. Watch the overdoses disappear. Watch the burden on your EMS reduce significantly, because they don't have to, show up for calls to all of the different overdoses that happen. It's a very simple formula if you just follow the logic.
Well, I want to say, follow the industry too, right? Follow the people. I always say you're only credible as the messenger, right? So people like I'm giving shout outs to like Gabby from Medicaid Ohio. You have Anthony Riley, who's doing a lot. I have a conference at the IX Center, OCHBS. Sign up for the newsletters. I mean, we're all, I like to work with everybody, right? Because I think that's the only way, the path forward to success in this space. We already have an uphill battle, as everybody can see. So trying to work together and be a unison is the only way that we're going to make this thing work across the board, So once again, thank everybody for joining us. Thanks to Beard Bros for letting us use your platform to educate our state. And again, just stay up to date. Thanks again, Emily, for this news breaking information about House Bill 160. And again, hopefully we'll get together again and, give everybody an update. I appreciate you.